All right, with that, to continue the discussion, there was a little spoiler alert there. I want to invite up Mike Renna, who's the CEO with South Jersey Industries, and we're going to continue this great discussion on energy and our opportunities and challenges in the state of New Jersey. Let's have a warm welcome for Mike. We'll be here about then, okay? So, well, Mike, again, I want to thank you as well for your incredible thought leadership here in New Jersey. You serve on the board of NJBIA, and I have to tell you, this is a thoughtful leader around our board table, and when Mike brings ideas to the table, they are critically important. So thank you for your leadership at BIA as well as for the state of New Jersey and what you do at SJI. You know, when you were a young pup, right, you didn't think you'd be running a big company like SJI one day, maybe a big company, but not in the utility space. So give us just a sneak peek of who is Mike Renna and how you came to your place today.
Who is Mike Renna? Well, Mike Renna is born and raised in New Jersey. I grew up in West Windsor, went to the University of Delaware, and following a very brief football career, which, when I mean brief, I was brief, it was a couple years, went on to graduate school and then spent a short period of time at M&T Bank and then went to work for SJI. So I have been with SJI for 28 years. The majority of my career prior to becoming CEO was on the non-utility side. So the first time I really had any responsibility for our utility was when I became president in 2014. So from 1998, when I started, till 2014, I was on our non-utility side of the business.
So we talk about, and as you heard again, continuous discussion of obviously the energy crisis on so many minds and the next governor for sure. You have been quoted as saying, we have a supply and demand disconnect right now. We have got to accelerate the development of generation and have to have an all of the above strategy. So break this down from us and explain, where do we go from here on this from SJI's perspective?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Ralph hit on all of these. And I think, when you talk about a leader that's had an impact on New Jersey, I don't think you have to look any further than Ralph LaRosa and what he and PSE&G have done. So I don't want to echo his sentiments because he's far more expert in the electricity than I am. But from our perspective, right, this is a supply-demand issue, right? And I think the problem is, and what people aren't talking about, is this is a decade-long, if not decades-long problem, right? Ralph talked about the fact that it's going to take 5 years to bring gas-fired generation online. It's probably going to be closer to 7 when you factor in the permitting and the supply chain challenges that exist in New Jersey. So if we're dealing with a deficit right now where we're importing more energy and then we are therefore subject to the prices associated with importing that energy, we are at least 7 years away from any kind of meaningful generation being brought online in New Jersey. And I will say this as a gas guy, it is absolutely an all of the above strategy, and it starts and ends with nuclear. We have got to bring on large-scale base load nuclear energy in New Jersey if we want to even attempt to be able to drive down the cost of electricity in New Jersey. And I will also say this, right? The problem is that we have this deficit now. And Ralph talked a lot about the need for an integrated planning. Well, the catalyst for that integrated planning is New Jersey has to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. Because there is a new industrial revolution that's going on right now, and that is all around data centers and AI. And they use an enormous amount of energy. So just to kind of put it in context, right? Georgia, who is one of the states that has really embraced data centers and the AI, when they did their forecast for their future 10-year energy projections on the electric side, it is now 13 times higher than it was just 5 years ago, right? And so if New Jersey wants to compete in this space, we have got to solve this problem. We have got to bring new generation online, right? The data centers and the hyperscalers are not going to come to New Jersey, and we are going to fall behind from an economic development standpoint right? Despite all the advantages New Jersey offers, we're going to end up falling behind because those developers are going to go where the energy is. And so when I say it's a supply and demand issue, it's not only an acute supply and demand issue now, it is a very large supply and demand issue 5 years, 10 years from now. And again, I really caution all of us or advise all of us to really think about and understand what the future holds for this state if we fall any further behind in terms of the next industrial revolution.
So let's go a little deeper on natural gas, and really no pun intended, right? But I kind of twitch when we talk about Marcellus Shale, because Bob Martin will remember I was New Jersey's rep to the Delaware River Basin Commission. Those meetings were horrific. I mean, and I'm using a light term when I say horrific, okay? The battles over moratorium, do we extract, do we build, do we go, right? So natural gas, where do we go about, number one, unleashing these opportunities? And you touched on the permitting, right? When we have opportunities to permit new pipelines, as you know, those are met with incredible challenge here in New Jersey, but we have the opportunity to do it on already existing right-of-ways, which we had at times, but still got shut down. Can you maybe bring some thought and color to how we can overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, this is a little unfair, right? Because you got all that boundless optimism from Jack and from Ralph, and now I'm going to be the one that's going to sort of ground us in a little bit more. Yeah, I'm the realist, right? So yay for me. So I talked about the supply-demand issue on the electric side. If the state commits to building the generation that is required, at a certain point in time, the same issues are gonna appear from a natural gas perspective. It is not due to a lack of supply, nor is it going to be due to a lack of demand, right? Because the data centers and the AI and just the organic demand for natural gas at the residential, commercial, industrial level will continue to grow. The demand will be there. And with the Marcellus, there's abundance of supply. The problem is there is limited takeaway capacity to connect the supply with the demand. We have not built, right, enough transmission. We have not invested enough in interstate pipelines to be able to move that gas from the supply area to the demand area. So what's going to end up happening 5, 10 years from now is that same disconnect that's happening on the electric side is going to ultimately happen on the gas side. So while we're talking about building out the required generation, we have to commit every bit as much to building the pipelines to be able to deliver that gas from the Marcellus Shale to the market areas like New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. If we don't do that, again, we're only going to make a big problem that much worse, because now not only are the electric, like when you think about your total cost of energy, right, you're going to have increasing electric costs and increasing gas costs.
So let's pivot over to the non-utility side. And basically, SJI has that non-utility subsidiary specializing in ownership, development, construction, operation of renewable energy projects. Why don't you bring some color to that? Tell us about where the opportunities for innovation in energy are and how that can impact affordability and accessibility.
Yeah. So I think all of us, right, at the end of the day, support the energy transition. We just do it in varying degrees. And we have, there is certainly, I think, a role for electrification. But I also believe that there is a very important role that our infrastructure plays in the energy transition, and that is the ability to move a decarbonized energy through our infrastructure to homes and businesses in the state of New Jersey. So what do I mean by decarbonization? I mean a lower carbon intensity blended fuel with geologic natural gas. So through RNG and or green hydrogen, right, you can bring down the carbon intensity of the natural gas that heats your homes and businesses or powers your manufacturing. RNG is renewable natural gas, right? It's renewable because it comes from waste. It's sourced from landfills, from, in some cases, wastewater treatment facilities, food waste, and also ag waste, right? Whether that's dairies or swine or in some cases poultry. You treat that either through an anaerobic digester or through an upgrader, right? You create the same BTU content and methane that is, it's identical to geologic natural gas. It can be blended very safely with the existing gas stream, and it brings down the carbon intensity. So it has a huge environmental impact. What is great about it is because of the investments that SJI, New Jersey Natural Gas, and PSE&G have made over the last decade to modernize our infrastructure, we are capable of delivering those blended fuels today, right? So there is an immediacy about decarbonization versus electrification that exists that I think is really the compelling case for why things like RNG and investments in RNG are so critical to the state. Because in many cases with electrification, right, it's the thesis there is that you're going to use renewable power or renewable energy, right, to power the electrification. Otherwise, you're just, you're electrifying something that's going to be generated via coal or other fossil fuels. All that generation has to be built, as does the in-state, intrastate, right? The grid itself, the interstate, New Jersey's grid has to be expanded. The reality is that if you electrify something, right, your base load switches on the electric side from the summer to the winter. The grid is built for the summer peak. The winter is 3 times as energy intensive as the winter. So you need that much more generation, and you need that much more transmission to be able to fully electrify. So that's where the decarbonization, I think, creates a very compelling business case and is able to really create an immediacy and an accelerant to New Jersey's energy master plan and its goals as far as the energy transition goes. We can produce RNG in this state. One thing New Jersey does not have a shortage of is landfills. So we can certainly, and we are at South Jersey South Jersey Industries. We just brought our first RNG project in Atlantic County online this past week. So we are taking the gas, the methane from a landfill, and we are safely injecting it in South Jersey Gas's system, and it will create the equivalent of the casino load in Atlantic City. So it will effectively displace the casino load with renewable natural gas versus geologic natural gas. We're also now under construction for 2 other facilities. One is in Burlington County. It will ultimately serve multiple customers in New Jersey. And then we also have the largest RNG project in the entire country, about a year away from commercial operations. And that is the Linden Renewable Energy Facility, which is taking food waste and converting it into energy. So that plant alone will produce 5,000 plus decatherms a day of natural gas. So what does that mean? That's about the equivalent of what a refinery requires on a daily basis. So that's how much gas we are going to be producing every day at the Linden Renewable Energy Facility when it comes online. And that waste is coming from New Jersey, so it's diverting food waste in New Jersey, as well as the 5 boroughs of New York City.
That's incredibly exciting and incredibly optimistic, by the way, right? I mean, well, we've been talking about where are all our shortages and what do we need to do, and you just came up with telling us that there's these new projects online and the impact they're having. And so congratulations to you and SJI, because that's really exciting. Your phone rings a week from today, and on the other end of that phone is the next governor of the state of New Jersey. What do you tell them?
I would probably tell them exactly what Ralph said. Let's get to work. And let's work together, right? I think the New Jersey utilities can be a tremendous catalyst for growth and for change in this state. We are one of the few industries in this state that is investing collectively billions of dollars a year on New Jersey's infrastructure. And we are every bit as committed to doing that going forward. And those investments in infrastructure are going to position us, again, to be able to take advantage of the next industrial revolution. They're going to ensure that your energy is delivered safely, reliably, that there's appropriate amount of resilience, and it will also it will ultimately lead to the affordability. But we have to get to work on not only figuring out what New Jersey's energy needs are going forward and how best to address them from a generation and a transmission perspective, both on the gas and the electric side. But again, I mean, I think, the other thing that we really need to focus on is the affordability, and that is going to require, I think, meaningful regulatory reform where we start to think about how the regulatory construct works today and how it should work for New Jersey going forward. And I think that gets to what Ralph's point is give us the ability to work with all of you being, the government officials, on creating a mechanism that stabilizes rates and leads to a greater level of predictability in terms of, pegging increases to inflation.
That's fabulous. And then at the same time, I always think like this is the perfect intersection of energy and environment, because at the same time, we need that regulatory reform on the permitting side, as you said, in order to enable these responsible projects in a responsible manner, which we know we can do. We absolutely know we can do that. So I think we have time for one question, maybe two. I'm keeping my eye on Ray Cantor there. But so let's get the mics out, and let's see who has a question for Mike. I know there's curiosity out there. Wow, I think you stymied them. They're all thinking about those great new projects that you have online. So, and I just want to circle back on that for one, because what I think I heard you say is the project in and around Atlantic City, which, and again, thank you for your incredible investment, taking your headquarters, right, and reinvesting in that greater Atlantic City area and the redevelopment of that whole Chelsea section. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're a huge player down there. And having a hub like you're building there and your workers coming there every day and what that does with Stockton University is a huge part of that ecosystem. So again, thank you for your leadership in making that bold move. But I just want you to make sure I heard you right about the impact of that one project, as you said, that it could power, parts of that casino industry down there.
Yeah, so when you think about the base load of the casinos, what the RNG facility at the Atlantic County landfill will produce the daily equivalent of what the casinos burn as a base load. So effectively, again, it's now renewable natural gas displacing geologic natural gas. And the Linden project, which is significantly larger, right, it's going to be what is the equivalent of taking a refinery offline in terms of the amount of gas that'll be generated out of the Linden project.
Great. So we do have an opportunity truly for an all-of-the-above approach on our solving our challenges for a good energy future here in the state of New Jersey. Mike, I want to thank you again for joining us today, for your leadership and what you do in the utility space, but also your leadership as an executive here in the state of New Jersey. Thank you so much.